Tonight, you don't need motivation. You don't need answers. You don't need to fix your life. You just need silence. Because the truth is, your mind is tired, more than you realize. Tired of thinking, tired of worrying, tired of replaying the same thoughts again and again. And no matter how hard you try, it just won't stop. But what if you didn't need to fight your mind to silence it? What if silence was already inside you, waiting? Tonight, just listen and let go. The biggest illusion you live with is this quiet belief that every thought in your head is you. It feels real. It feels personal. It feels like truth. A thought appears, and instantly, you attach to it. I'm not good enough. Something is wrong. I need to fix this. And without even noticing, you become that thought. But pause for a moment. If you were truly your thoughts, then why can you hear them? Why can you observe them? Why can you notice when your mind is loud or when it is quiet? There is something deeper inside you, something still, something aware that is watching all of this happen. That is you, not the noise, not the chaos, not the endless stream of thinking. Your mind is like a crowded room filled with voices from your past, fears about your future, opinions you picked up from others, and stories you keep repeating. And you've been standing in that room for so long, you forgot you're not the voices. You are the one listening. The moment you begin to see this clearly, something powerful happens. You stop reacting to every thought as if it's an emergency. You stop chasing every idea as if it's important. You create space, and in that space, the noise begins to weaken. Because thoughts only have power when you believe them, follow them, and fight them. But when you simply watch them without getting involved, they start to lose their grip. You realize that a thought can appear, stay for a moment, and disappear without controlling you. This is where freedom begins. Not when your mind becomes silent, but when you stop being controlled by its noise. And slowly, very slowly, the distance between you and your thoughts grows. The mind keeps speaking, but you no longer feel pulled by every word. And in that quiet distance, you start to feel something you haven't felt in a long time: peace. Most people believe the solution is to stop thinking, so they try. They force their mind to be quiet. They push thoughts away. They fight every idea that appears. But something strange happens. The harder you try to silence your mind, the louder it becomes. A thought you wanted gone comes back stronger. A worry you tried to ignore feels heavier. A memory you pushed away keeps returning. It feels like your own mind is working against you, but it's not. You're just using the wrong approach. The mind doesn't respond to force. It reacts to it. The moment you resist a thought, you give it importance. You tell your mind, this matters. And your mind listens. It holds on to it, repeats it, brings it back again and again. That's why the struggle never ends. Because you're not just thinking, you're fighting your thinking. And that fight is what keeps the noise alive. Now imagine something different. A thought appears, but this time, you don't push it away. You don't chase it. You don't argue with it. You don't try to fix it. You simply notice it and let it be. At first, it feels uncomfortable because you're used to reacting. You're used to controlling. You're used to doing something. But now, you do nothing. And slowly, something shifts. The thought doesn't grow. It doesn't pull you in. It just sits there for a moment and then fades. Not because you forced it to leave, but because you didn't give it energy. This is the quiet truth most people never realize. Thoughts survive on your attention. Take away the struggle, and you take away their power. You don't need to win against your mind. You don't need to control it. You just need to stop feeding it. And in that moment, when you finally stop fighting, the silence you've been chasing begins to come to you on its own. Not every thought you have deserves to be believed, but most of the time, you don't question them. A thought appears, and you accept it immediately. I'm behind in life. Something bad is going to happen. I'm not enough. And without even realizing it, your mood changes, your body reacts, your peace disappears. All because of something that might not even be true. Your mind is not always speaking facts. It speaks from fear, from past experiences, from old memories that no longer exist. Sometimes it repeats things you heard years ago, things someone said to you, things you once believed when you were hurting. But just because a thought feels real, doesn't mean it is real. Think about it. How many times have you worried about something and it never happened? How many times has your mind created a story that turned out to be completely wrong? Yet, in the moment, it felt certain. That's how powerful thoughts are. They don't need truth to control you. They just need your belief. The moment you believe a thought, it shapes how you feel. And the moment it shapes how you feel, it begins to control your actions. But there is a quiet shift you can make. Instead of believing every thought, start observing them. A thought appears, and instead of saying, "This is true," you simply say, "This is a thought." That small distance changes everything, because now you are not inside the thought. You are looking at it, and when you look at something clearly, you begin to see its flaws. You begin to notice how many thoughts are exaggerated, how many are negative by habit, how many are just noise repeating itself. And slowly, your trust in them weakens. You don't react as quickly. You don't get pulled as easily. You begin to choose which thoughts deserve your attention, and most of them don't. This is where your mind starts to quiet down. Not because thoughts stopped coming, but because you stopped believing everything they say. And in that space, where belief fades, peace begins to return. Right now, in this exact moment, nothing is happening. No problem is in front of you. No danger is here. No situation is asking for your reaction. And yet, your mind is not here. It keeps going back to something that already ended, back to something you cannot change, back to moments that exist nowhere, except inside your head. You replay conversations. You revisit mistakes. You relive pain as if it is still happening. And every time you do, your body feels it again. The regret, the guilt, the discomfort. But look closely. Is the past really here? Or are you bringing it back again and again? The past has no power on its own. It cannot reach you. It cannot hurt you. It cannot return unless you keep opening the door for it. Your mind does this automatically. It tries to understand, to fix, to rewrite what already happened. But no matter how many times you replay it, nothing changes. You only exhaust yourself. You only keep the wound alive. There is a quiet truth most people avoid. Holding on to the past does not protect you. It only traps you, because while your mind is living there, you are missing what is here. And what is here is the only place where peace exists. Not in yesterday, not in memory, not in regret, only now. When you gently bring your attention back, away from what has already passed, something soft begins to happen. The weight starts to lift. The tightness begins to loosen. Not because you solved the past, but because you stopped feeding it. You begin to see that you don't need to carry everything forward. Some things can be left behind, not by force, not by denial, but by simply choosing not to return. And as you stop visiting the past, your mind slowly, very slowly, begins to feel lighter. And in that lightness, you start to experience a quiet kind of freedom, the kind that only exists when you finally let go. There is another place your mind keeps running to, even when nothing is happening. The future. It feels different from the past, but it creates the same kind of noise, because the future does not exist yet. And still, your mind treats it like it's already real. You imagine situations that haven't happened. You create problems that don't exist. You build entire stories out of uncertainty. What if something goes wrong? What if I fail? What if I'm not ready? And suddenly, your body reacts as if all of it is happening right now. Your chest tightens. Your breathing changes. Your thoughts speed up. All from something that is only imagination. This is how anxiety is created. Not from reality, but from possibilities. Your mind is trying to protect you. It scans the future, looking for danger, trying to prepare you, trying to keep you safe. But it doesn't know the difference between a real threat and a thought, so it reacts to everything. And the more you listen to these imagined scenarios, the more real they begin to feel. You start believing them. You start preparing for things that may never come. You lose your peace, not because something is wrong, but because something might be wrong. And this might becomes heavy. It pulls your attention away from the only place that is real. This moment, right now, as you sit here, listening, breathing, being, nothing is asking you to panic. Nothing is demanding fear. Nothing is actually going wrong, but your mind keeps pulling you forward into a future that hasn't arrived. And the more you follow it, the more distant peace becomes. There is a quiet shift you can make here. Instead of trying to control the future, come back to what is real. Feel your breath. Notice your body. Listen to the space around you. This moment is simple. It is not filled with all the what-ifs your mind creates. It is just here. And in this moment, you are okay. The future is uncertain, and it always will be. No amount of thinking can fully control it. No amount of worrying can guarantee safety. But your mind keeps trying, again and again, exhausting itself in the process. You don't need to solve the future tonight. You don't need to figure everything out before you rest. You don't need answers to every possibility your mind creates. Most of those possibilities will never happen. And even if something does, you will meet it when it arrives. Not now. Now is not the time to carry tomorrow's weight. Now is the time to let go. Imagine putting down a heavy bag you didn't even realize you were holding. That bag is everything you are trying to control, everything you are trying to predict, everything you are trying to prepare for. You've been carrying it for so long, it feels normal, but it's not necessary. You can put it down, not forever, but just for now, just for this moment. And as you do, you may notice something surprising. The mind begins to slow. The tension begins to soften, because you are no longer feeding it with endless what-ifs. You are no longer chasing every possible future. You are here, and here is quiet. The future will come on its own. It doesn't need your constant attention. It doesn't need your worry to arrive. Life will unfold, step by step, whether you think about it or not. And when it does, you will respond. You always have. Every challenge you faced, you met it in the moment, not days before, not in your imagination, but when it was actually there. This is how life works, not in the future, but in the present. So instead of living in imagined tomorrows, come back to what is real, to your breath, to your body, to this quiet space you are in right now. There is nothing to solve here, nothing to fix, nothing to fear. Just this moment, as it is. And in this moment, there is a kind of peace that doesn't come from control, but from acceptance. You don't need to know what happens next. You don't need to predict the outcome. You don't need to carry the uncertainty. You can simply be here. Let the future remain where it belongs, ahead of you, not inside you. And as you slowly stop chasing it, your mind begins to settle. The noise fades. The urgency disappears, and in its place, something softer begins to grow. A quiet trust, a feeling that you don't need to hold everything together all the time, a sense that it's okay to not know, because right now, in this moment, you are breathing, you are here, and that is enough. Let tomorrow come when it comes. Tonight, you can rest. Tonight, you can release the future. And in that release, your mind finally begins to feel still. You have spent so much time trying to create silence that you forgot to notice something very simple. Silence is already there. It has always been there. Not something you build, not something you force, not something you chase. It exists beneath everything, beneath the thoughts, beneath the worries, beneath the constant movement of your mind. But because your attention is always on the noise, you miss it. It's like standing next to a river. The water is loud, It moves fast. It pulls your focus. But just beyond it, there is stillness. A quiet space that never moves. Your mind is that river, always flowing, always changing, always making sound. But you are not the river. You are the space that holds it. The silence has never left you. You just got used to listening to the noise. Think about this. Between two thoughts, there is a gap. A tiny pause. You may not notice it at first, but it's there. A moment where nothing is being said. Nothing is being imagined. Nothing is being judged. That is silence. Not something far away. Not something you need to reach. Something that already exists, right now. But your mind doesn't stay there for long. It quickly fills the space again. Another thought appears. Another idea. Another memory. And just like that, the silence is covered. Not gone. Just hidden. This is the important part to understand. Silence is not something that comes and goes. It is always present. Thoughts come and go. Noise comes and goes. But silence remains. You don't need to create it. You only need to notice it. And that requires a different kind of attention. Not effort. Not control. Not force. Just awareness. A soft noticing. A gentle shift from doing to observing. Right now, you can try something very simple. Don't try to stop your thoughts. Don't try to calm your mind. Just listen. Not to the thoughts, but to the space behind them. You may hear a thought, then a small pause, then another thought. That pause is where silence lives. At first, it feels small, almost invisible. But the more you notice it, the more it begins to expand. Not because you made it bigger, but because your attention is no longer trapped in the noise. And slowly, something changes. The thoughts are still there, but they don't feel as heavy. They don't feel as urgent. Because now, you are aware of something deeper than them. Something more stable. Something that doesn't react. This is why chasing silence never works. Because the moment you chase, you create more movement, more effort, more tension, more noise. Silence cannot be forced. It can only be found by stopping the search, by allowing everything to be as it is, and noticing what remains when you are not trying to change anything. Most people spend their whole lives trying to fix their mind, trying to improve it, trying to control it, trying to make it quiet. But the truth is, your mind doesn't need fixing. It needs space. And silence is that space. A place where thoughts can come and go without controlling you. A place where you are not reacting to everything, not holding on to everything, not fighting everything, just being. At first, this feels unfamiliar because you are used to doing something. You are used to solving, thinking, analyzing. But silence asks you to do the opposite, to stop, to allow, to simply be present. And in that stillness, you begin to feel something new. A kind of calm that is not created by solving problems. A kind of peace that does not depend on circumstances, because it is not coming from the outside. It is coming from within, from the part of you that has always been quiet, even when your mind was loud. This is why silence feels so powerful. Not because it removes your thoughts, but because it reminds you you are more than them. You begin to see that your thoughts are just movements, temporary, passing. They rise, they fall, they disappear, but the silence behind them never moves. And when you rest in that silence, your relationship with your mind changes. You no longer feel overwhelmed by every thought. You no longer feel the need to respond to everything. You begin to let things pass, and in that letting go, the mind naturally becomes quieter. Not because you forced it, but because you stopped feeding the noise. This is where deep rest begins. Not just physical rest, but mental rest. The kind of rest where your mind is not constantly working, not constantly searching, not constantly reacting, just resting in silence. And the more you allow yourself to stay here, even for a few moments, the more familiar it becomes, the more natural it feels. Until one day, you realize something important. Silence was never something you needed to find. It was something you needed to return to. It was always here, waiting, passive, unchanged, while your mind moved in every direction, while your thoughts came and went, while your worries rose and fell, silence stayed. And now, as you begin to notice it again, you don't need to chase peace anymore. You don't need to search for calm, because you understand something most people miss. Peace is not created, it is uncovered, and silence is what reveals it. So tonight, don't try to control your mind. Don't try to make it perfect. Just sit with it. Let the thoughts come. Let them go. And gently, bring your attention back to the quiet space behind them. Again and again. Without force. Without pressure. Just noticing. And as you do, you may begin to feel it. That soft, steady, unshaken silence. The part of you that has never been disturbed. The part of you that is always at rest. And in that space, your mind finally begins to settle. Not because it had to, but because it found its way back home. There is a deep habit in your mind, so subtle that you rarely notice it. The need to control everything. You want clarity. You want certainty. You want to know what will happen and how it will happen. Your mind keeps asking questions. What should I do next? What if I make the wrong choice? How do I make this better? And even when there is no immediate problem, the mind continues searching, looking for something to fix, something to solve, something to control. At first, it feels useful. It feels like you are being responsible, prepared, aware. But slowly, it turns into something else. A constant tension, a quiet pressure that never leaves. Because life does not follow your plans. No matter how much you think, no matter how much you analyze, you cannot control everything. And the more you try, the more restless your mind becomes. Think about how exhausting it is, trying to predict every outcome, trying to avoid every mistake, trying to prepare for every possibility. It never ends, because there is always something unknown, always something uncertain, and your mind is not comfortable with uncertainty. It sees it as danger, so it keeps working, keeps thinking, keeps trying to control what cannot be controlled. And in that effort, it loses its peace. But there is a different way to live, a way that does not rely on controlling everything, a way that allows life to unfold without constant resistance. And it begins with a simple realization. Not everything needs your control. Right now, look around you. There are countless things happening without your effort. Your heart is beating. Your breath is flowing. Life is moving forward on its own. You are not managing every detail. You are not controlling every process. And yet, everything continues. In the same way, many parts of your life do not need constant control. They need space. They need trust. But your mind struggles with this because letting go feels uncomfortable. It feels like you are giving up, like you are becoming careless, like something might go wrong. So you hold on tighter. You think more. You plan more. You try to stay one step ahead. But the tighter you hold, the more tension you create, the more pressure you feel, the more noise fills your mind. Now imagine something different. Instead of holding everything tightly, you loosen your grip just a little. You don't abandon responsibility. You don't stop caring. You simply stop trying to control every outcome. You allow some things to remain uncertain. You allow some answers to come later. You allow life to move without forcing it. At first, this feels unfamiliar because you are used to constant effort. You are used to thinking your way through everything. But slowly, something begins to shift. The pressure starts to ease. The urgency fades because you are no longer trying to carry everything at once. You are no longer trying to solve the entire future in a single moment. You begin to focus on what is actually here. What can I do right now? What needs my attention in this moment? And everything else can wait. This is not weakness. This is clarity. Because when your mind is not overwhelmed with everything, it becomes sharper, more present, more effective. You start to respond instead of react. You start to act with awareness instead of fear. And something else begins to grow. Trust. Not blind trust, but a quiet understanding that life does not need to be controlled to be lived, that not knowing everything is okay. That uncertainty is not your enemy. It is simply part of being alive. Every moment you have ever lived was once uncertain. Every step you took happened without full control, and yet you moved forward. You learned. You adapted. You grew, not because you controlled everything, but because you allowed yourself to experience it. This is what your mind forgets. It believes that control brings safety, but often it only brings tension. Real safety comes from your ability to be present, to meet life as it happens, to respond with awareness, not fear. And that requires letting go of constant control. Letting go does not mean doing nothing. It means doing what you can and releasing what you cannot. It means taking a step without needing to see the entire path. It means allowing life to unfold without forcing every detail. And when you begin to live this way, your mind starts to relax because it no longer carries an impossible task. It no longer tries to control the uncontrollable. It simply stays with what is real. Here, now, in this moment, there is something very peaceful about this, something very freeing, because you realize you don't need to hold everything together all the time. You don't need to have all the answers tonight. You don't need to figure out your entire life before you rest. You can pause. You can breathe. You can let things be for a while. And in that pause, your mind finds relief. The constant movement slows down. The endless questioning softens. Because you are no longer pushing against life. You are moving with it. And that changes everything. Instead of feeling like you are carrying a heavy load, you begin to feel lighter. Instead of feeling trapped in your thoughts, you begin to feel space. And in that space, silence begins to return. Not forced, not created, but naturally. Because the mind, when it is not overwhelmed with control, knows how to rest. So tonight, you don't need to control everything. You don't need to solve every problem. You don't need to predict every outcome. You can let go, just for now. Let life continue. Let things unfold, and allow your mind to finally step out of the constant effort and into a place of quiet ease. Because sometimes, the greatest peace comes not from holding on, but from gently letting go. There is something very simple, yet very powerful, that most people never truly learn. How to let thoughts pass. Not control them. Not fight them. Not follow them endlessly. Just let them pass. Your mind is always moving. One thought comes, then another, then another. Sometimes they are light. Sometimes they are heavy. Sometimes they pull you into long chains of thinking without you even realizing it. A single thought appears, and suddenly you are lost inside it. You start analyzing, you start reacting, you start building more thoughts around it. Minutes pass, sometimes hours, and by the time you notice, your mind feels tired, heavy, crowded. But what if you didn't have to follow every thought? What if a thought could appear, and you could simply watch it without getting pulled in? This is where everything begins to change. Imagine standing under an open sky. Clouds are moving above you. Some are dark, some are light, some are fast, some are slow. But you don't chase them. You don't try to hold them. You don't try to push them away. You just stand there and watch. This is how your thoughts can be. They are not permanent. They don't stay. They move, naturally. But the moment you grab onto one, it stops being a passing cloud and becomes a storm inside you. The mind has a habit. It takes one thought and builds a story. I made a mistake. Becomes, I always mess things up. Becomes, I'm not capable. Becomes, what will happen in the future? And suddenly, one small thought turns into something heavy. But this only happens because you follow it. You give it attention. You give it energy. You stay with it. Now imagine a different response. A thought appears. You notice it. But instead of stepping into it, you stay where you are. You don't argue with it. You don't believe it immediately. You don't try to solve it. You simply observe. It feels unfamiliar at first, because your habit is to react, to engage, to do something. But now, you do nothing. And in that nothing, something powerful happens. The thought begins to move. It doesn't stay as long. It doesn't grow. It doesn't pull you deeper, because it has nothing to hold on to. This is the nature of thoughts. They need your attention to survive. Without it, they fade. But most people never see this, because they are always inside their thoughts, never outside them. They are always reacting, never observing. So the thoughts keep repeating, keep growing, keep returning, and the mind never feels quiet. Learning to let thoughts pass is not about stopping them. It's about changing your relationship with them. Instead of being inside every thought, you become the one who watches them. Instead of being pulled by every idea, you stay grounded. And slowly, the space between you and your thoughts grows. You begin to notice something. Thoughts are not as powerful as they seemed. They come and go on their own. They rise, they fall, they disappear. Even the strongest thought cannot stay forever. But when you hold on to it, when you replay it, when you keep returning to it, you give it life again. You bring it back. You keep it alive. This is why the mind feels so crowded. Not because there are too many thoughts, but because too many thoughts are being held. Now imagine what happens when you stop holding, when you stop chasing, when you stop engaging with every single thought. The mind begins to clear. Not instantly, not all at once, but gradually, like a sky after a storm. At first, there are still clouds, but they are lighter, less heavy, less overwhelming. And as time passes, the sky opens, more space appears, more quiet, more stillness. This is what happens inside you. When you let thoughts pass, you create space. And in that space, peace naturally begins to grow. There is something important to understand here. Letting thoughts pass does not mean ignoring everything. It does not mean becoming careless. It means choosing where your attention goes. Some thoughts are useful. They help you act. They help you make decisions. But many thoughts are just noise, repetition, old patterns, fear-based thinking. And these thoughts do not need your attention. They do not need your energy. They can be allowed to pass without judgment, without resistance, without involvement. At first, you may forget. You may get pulled into thoughts again. That's okay. This is not about being perfect. It's about noticing and returning again and again. A thought pulls you in. You realize it. You step back. You watch. That's it. No frustration, no pressure, just awareness. And each time you do this, you strengthen something inside you. A quiet presence, a calm awareness, a part of you that is not disturbed by every thought. This part becomes stronger, more stable, more natural, until one day you realize something has changed. The thoughts are still there, but they don't control you the same way. They don't feel as heavy. They don't pull you as deeply, because you are no longer holding on to them. You are letting them move, letting them pass. This is where the mind begins to rest, not because it stopped thinking, but because it stopped holding. And that changes everything, because holding creates tension, holding creates pressure, holding creates noise, but letting go creates space, creates ease, creates quiet. And in that quiet, you begin to feel something deeper, a calm that is not dependent on your thoughts, a stillness that is not affected by every idea that appears, a peace that remains, even when the mind is moving. This is the real freedom, not the absence of thoughts, but the absence of attachment to them, the ability to let them come and let them go without being pulled in every direction. And the more you practice this, the more natural it becomes. You stop chasing every thought. You stop reacting to everything. You begin to live with more space, more clarity, more calm. So tonight, you don't need to silence your mind. You don't need to stop your thoughts. You just need to let them pass. Like clouds in the sky, like waves in the ocean. Let them move, let them flow, and stay where you are, watching, aware, still, because the more you let go of holding, the more your mind begins to feel light. And in that lightness, silence begins to return, not because you created it, but because you stopped blocking it. And slowly, gently, your mind finds its way back to a place of quiet ease. There is one place you can always return to, no matter how loud your mind becomes. It is simple. It is always with you, and it asks nothing from you. Your breath. You have been breathing since the moment you were born. Without effort, without instruction, without control. It has been there through every thought, every emotion, every moment of your life. And yet, you rarely notice it, because your attention is always somewhere else. Lost in thoughts, pulled into the past, carried into the future. But your breath is always here, always in the present, always steady, always real. This is why your breath is so powerful. Not because it changes your life instantly, but because it brings you back to what is real. When your mind feels overwhelming, when thoughts are moving too fast, when you feel pulled in every direction, you don't need to solve anything. You don't need to figure everything out. You can simply return to your breath. At first, it feels too simple, almost like it won't work, because your mind is used to complexity. It believes that peace must come from solving problems, from understanding everything, from thinking more. But peace does not come from thinking more. It comes from stepping out of thinking, even for a moment. And your breath gives you that doorway. Right now, without changing anything, just notice your breathing. The air moving in, the air moving out. You don't need to control it. You don't need to make it deeper or slower. Just notice it as it is. At first, your mind will still be active. Thoughts will continue. Distractions will appear. You may feel like nothing is changing. That's okay, because this is not about stopping your mind instantly. It is about shifting your attention. Every time your mind pulls you away, gently bring it back. Not with force, not with frustration, just a soft return. Back to the breath, again and again. This simple act is more powerful than it seems, because each time you return, you are stepping out of the noise. You are breaking the habit of endless thinking. You are reminding your mind that it does not need to chase every thought. At first, this space is small, just a few seconds of awareness. Then the mind pulls you back into thinking, but you return again, and slowly, the space begins to grow. A few seconds become a little longer. The breath becomes clearer. The mind becomes slightly quieter, not because you forced it, but because you are no longer feeding it constantly. Your breath becomes an anchor, something stable, in the middle of movement, something real, in the middle of imagination. No matter what your mind is doing, your breath is there, waiting, steady, unchanged. And when you stay with it, you begin to notice something subtle. Your body begins to relax. The tension softens. The tightness in your chest loosens. Your shoulders drop. Your breathing becomes deeper, naturally, not forced, just happening on its own, because your body feels safe. When your attention is in your thoughts, your body often feels like it is under threat, even if nothing is happening. But when your attention is on your breath, your body recognizes the present moment, and in the present moment, there is nothing to fear. So it begins to calm down. This is why your breath is so important. It connects your mind to your body, to the present. It brings everything back to now, where life is actually happening. Not in your thoughts, not in your worries, but here, now. And as you stay with your breath, you begin to feel a quiet rhythm. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Simple, natural, uncomplicated. This rhythm becomes like a gentle wave, and your awareness rests on it. Thoughts may still appear, but they feel softer, more distant, less urgent, because your attention is not inside them anymore. It is here, with the breath. You begin to see something clearly. You don't need to follow every thought. You don't need to react to everything. You can choose where your attention goes. And when your attention stays with your breath, your mind begins to settle. Like a lake, when the wind stops, the surface becomes calmer. The movement slows. The clarity returns. But this does not happen instantly. It happens gradually, gently, naturally. And the key is patience. Not forcing, not expecting quick results. Just returning, again and again. Each breath is a new moment, a new chance to come back, a new opportunity to let go of everything else. Nothing else matters here. Not the past, not the future. Just this breath, this moment. And as you continue, something deeper begins to happen. Your breath is no longer just something you notice. It becomes a place you rest, a place you return to when everything feels too much, a place that is always available, no matter where you are, no matter what is happening, no matter how loud your mind becomes. Your breath is there, waiting, ready to bring you back. And the more you rely on it, the more familiar it becomes, the more natural it feels, until one day, without even thinking, you return to it automatically. When stress appears, when anxiety rises, when your mind becomes loud, you don't get lost as easily, because you know where to go. Back to your breath, back to the present, back to what is real. And in that return, you find something very simple, yet very powerful. A sense of calm, not created, not forced, but discovered, because it was always there, beneath the noise. Your breath does not solve your problems. It does not answer your questions, but it gives you something more important. A space, a pause, a moment where you are not overwhelmed, where you are not lost, where you are simply here. And sometimes, that is all you need. A moment of stillness, a moment of presence, a moment where the mind is not running, but resting. So tonight, when your thoughts feel heavy, when your mind feels loud, you don't need to do anything complicated. You don't need to search for answers. You don't need to fight your mind. Just come back to your breath. Feel it, follow it, stay with it, and let everything else be as it is. Because in that simple act, your mind begins to slow, your body begins to relax, and the silence you've been searching for begins to gently appear. One breath at a time, there is something your mind rarely allows you to do, to truly rest. Not just sleep, not just distraction, but real, deep rest. The kind of rest where your mind is not working in the background, not solving problems, not replaying the past, not preparing for the future, just resting. Most of the time, even when your body is still, your mind is not. You lie down, you close your eyes, but inside, everything continues. Thoughts keep moving, images keep appearing, questions keep repeating, and you try to rest. But something inside you stays active. It feels like you cannot switch off, like your mind is always on. This is not because something is wrong with you. It is because your mind has learned a habit of constant activity. For so long, you have trained it to think, to analyze, to respond to everything, every notification, every problem, every thought. You've taught your mind that it must always be doing something. So when you finally try to rest, it doesn't know how. It keeps going, not because it wants to disturb you, but because it doesn't know another way. And this is where something important needs to change. You don't need to force your mind to stop. You need to allow it to slow down. There is a difference. Forcing creates resistance. Allowing creates space. Right now, your mind is like a machine that has been running all day. You cannot just shut it off instantly. It needs time to slow. It needs a moment to transition. But most people don't give it that moment. They go from constant stimulation straight into trying to sleep, from screens to silence, from noise to stillness. And the mind cannot adjust that quickly, so it keeps moving. But what if, instead of forcing it to stop, you gently guided it into rest? What if you allowed your mind to unwind, step by step? It begins with something very simple: permission. You give yourself permission to not think. Not forever, just for now. You don't need to solve anything tonight. You don't need to figure everything out before you sleep. You don't need to have answers to every question. You can pause, you can stop, you can rest. At first, your mind may resist this. It may bring more thoughts, more ideas, more things to think about, because it is used to being active. But instead of following it, you stay where you are. You don't engage. You don't chase. You don't push anything away. You simply allow the mind to slow on its own, like a spinning wheel that gradually loses momentum. At first, it spins fast, then a little slower, then slower still, until eventually, it comes to rest. But this only happens if you stop pushing it, if you stop adding more movement. Each time you engage with a thought, you spin the wheel again. Each time you analyze, you add more energy. So the key is not to stop the wheel forcefully, but to stop feeding it. Let the thoughts come, but don't follow them. Let them move, but don't add to them. Stay still, and over time, the movement begins to slow. There is something else you can notice here. The body and the mind are connected. When the mind is active, the body often feels tense. And when the body is tense, the mind stays active. So instead of only focusing on your thoughts, bring your attention to your body. Notice where you are holding tension: your shoulders, your neck, your jaw. Without forcing anything, just allow those areas to soften. You don't need to make a big effort, just a gentle awareness, a small release. And as the body begins to relax, the mind follows, because the body sends a signal that says, it's safe to rest. And when the body feels safe, the mind begins to let go. This is how deep rest begins, not by forcing silence, but by creating the conditions for silence. Another thing to understand is that rest is not something you achieve. It is something you allow. You don't make yourself rest. You stop preventing rest. Think about how often you interrupt your own rest, with thinking, with worrying, with planning. Even when nothing needs your attention, the mind keeps working. But what if you didn't interrupt it? What if you let the natural process of rest happen? Your body knows how to rest. Your mind knows how to quiet down. You don't need to teach it. You only need to stop interfering. And this is where patience becomes important, because the mind will not become silent instantly. It will take time. It will move. It will bring thoughts. It will try to engage you. But each time, you return to stillness, without frustration, without pressure, just a gentle return. And slowly, the gap between thoughts grows. The mind becomes less busy. The noise becomes softer. You may notice moments where there is no thought, just a quiet awareness, a simple presence. These moments may be brief at first, but they are important because they show you something. That silence is possible. That rest is not far away. It is already beginning. And as you continue to allow this process, those moments become longer. The mind spends more time in stillness, more time in quiet, more time at rest. There is also something else you may begin to feel: a sense of relief, a lightness, as if a weight is being lifted. This is the weight of constant thinking, of always trying to figure things out, of always being on. And as that weight begins to drop, you feel different, softer, calmer, more at ease. This is not something you force. It happens naturally when you allow your mind to rest. And eventually, this rest becomes deeper, more stable, not just moments, but a continuous feeling of calm. Even when thoughts appear, they do not disturb you the same way. Because the mind is no longer in constant motion, it has learned how to pause, how to be still, how to rest. This is the kind of rest that changes everything. Because it is not just about sleep, it is about how you experience your mind. A rested mind is clearer, more focused, more peaceful. It does not react as quickly. It does not get overwhelmed as easily. It simply moves with more ease. And this begins here, in this moment, not by doing more, but by doing less, by allowing, by letting go, by giving yourself permission to rest. So tonight, you don't need to force your mind to be quiet. You don't need to fight your thoughts. You don't need to solve anything. You can simply lie here and allow everything to slow down. Let the thoughts come. Let them go. Let the body soften. Let the breath move naturally. And trust that rest will come, not because you made it happen, but because you stopped preventing it. And as you stay here, in this gentle allowing, your mind begins to settle. The noise fades. The movement slows. And little by little, you drift into a deeper kind of rest. A rest that is not forced. A rest that is natural. A rest that your mind has been waiting for a long time. And in that rest, everything becomes quiet, not because the world stopped, but because you finally allowed yourself to stop with it, to pause, to let go, and to rest completely. There is a quiet misunderstanding that keeps your mind restless. The belief that you need answers for everything, every feeling, every situation, every uncertainty. Your mind is constantly searching, trying to understand, trying to figure things out, trying to reach a point where everything finally makes sense. And it feels important. It feels like if you can just find the right answer, the right solution, then your mind will finally relax. But notice what actually happens. You find one answer, and your mind moves to the next question. You solve one problem, and another one appears. You understand something, and then you begin to doubt it again. It never ends, because the mind is not built to be satisfied. It is built to keep searching, to keep analyzing, to keep moving. And when you believe that every question needs an answer, you give your mind an endless task, a task it can never complete. That is why it feels so tired, so full, so restless, because it is always working, always trying to reach a point that never truly arrives. But what if you didn't need to answer everything? What if some things could remain unknown? This is where something begins to shift, because not every question needs to be solved tonight. Not every feeling needs to be explained. Not every situation needs immediate clarity. Some things take time. Some things unfold on their own. And some things do not need to be understood at all. But your mind resists this. It feels uncomfortable with not knowing. It feels like you are losing control, like you are leaving something unfinished. So it keeps going, keeps thinking, keeps searching. But that search is what keeps the noise alive. There is a quiet strength in not knowing, in allowing space, in letting things be incomplete for now. This does not mean you ignore your life. It does not mean you stop caring. It simply means you stop forcing answers. You stop trying to solve everything all at once. Right now, ask yourself something simple. Is there anything in this moment that truly needs to be figured out? Not tomorrow, not later, but right now. Most of the time, the answer is no. The urgency your mind creates is not coming from reality. It is coming from habit, a habit of constant solving, constant thinking, constant searching. But when you pause and you step back, you begin to see clearly. There is nothing you need to fix in this moment, nothing you need to resolve before you rest. You can allow things to remain open, unfinished, unknown. And as you do, the pressure begins to lift, because you are no longer carrying everything at once. You are no longer trying to complete every thought. You are allowing space, and in that space, your mind begins to slow. This is where a deeper kind of peace begins. Not the peace of having all the answers, but the peace of not needing them. A quiet acceptance, a soft understanding that life does not need to be fully controlled or fully understood to be lived. You begin to trust the process, not in a dramatic way, but in a simple, calm way. Things will become clear when they need to. Answers will come when the time is right. And until then, you can rest. This is not something your mind easily accepts. It will try to pull you back, bring up questions again, create new things to think about. But each time, you gently return. You remind yourself, not everything needs to be solved right now. You allow the questions to be there. Without chasing them, you let them exist, without needing to answer them. And slowly, their intensity fades. Because questions only stay alive when you keep engaging with them, when you keep trying to solve them. But when you step back, when you stop feeding them, they lose their urgency. They become quieter, lighter, more distant. This is how the mind begins to rest. Not by finding all the answers, but by letting go of the need to have them. And as this happens, you may begin to feel something new. A sense of openness, a feeling of space. As if your mind is no longer crowded, no longer full of unfinished thoughts. Just open, calm, at ease. This openness is not emptiness. It is clarity. It is the absence of pressure, the absence of constant searching. And in that absence, you begin to feel peace. A peace that is not dependent on understanding everything. A peace that does not require certainty. Just a quiet presence. A simple being. Here, now, in this moment. You don't need to know everything. You don't need to figure everything out. You don't need to solve every part of your life tonight. You can allow things to unfold. You can allow time to do its work. You can allow yourself to rest. And as you do, your mind begins to trust this space, begins to relax into it, begins to understand that not knowing is not a problem. It is simply part of life. And in that understanding, something shifts. The constant pressure fades. The endless searching slows. And what remains is a quiet, steady calm. So tonight, you don't need answers. You don't need solutions. You don't need to figure everything out. You can simply be here. Let the questions come, and let them stay unanswered. Let the uncertainty be there, without trying to remove it. And in that allowing, your mind begins to settle, because it is no longer chasing something. It is no longer searching for completion. It is simply resting in the space you have given it. And in that space, peace naturally appears. Not because everything is solved, but because nothing is being forced anymore. And that is enough. Now, just stay here for a moment. Notice your breath. Slow, natural, effortless. You don't need to think anymore. You don't need to solve anything tonight. Everything can wait. The past can rest. The future can come later. Right now, there is nothing missing, nothing to fix, nothing to chase. Just this quiet moment, just this gentle stillness. If your mind begins to wander again, that's okay. Let the thoughts come and let them pass. You don't have to follow them anymore. Just return to this calm, to this silence. And slowly, as you let go of everything you were holding, your body softens, your mind quiets, and you begin to drift deeper and deeper into rest. So tonight, don't try to control anything. Just allow yourself to sleep.